Yes. And good morning. Welcome to B Cube Sunday morning. We are blessed this morning to have two writers who have been, well, Gordon, you're way more than a writer, and the with your history, but who have contributed to our current release of alternative holidays. I have to say, my wife wanted to read the book because she loves holiday stories. She's an addict to the holiday or the Hallmark Christmas channel. And you don't want to know the glare she gave me uh, when I told her it was dark, but she actually read before she went to bed and said the stories were scaring her. Uh, it made me feel good. So, Gordon, why don't you introduce yourself and tell these people who you are?
Okay, my name is Linzer. I've been publishing Space and Time magazine back in high school, sometime in the middle of last century. I also work as a tour guide here in New York. I've got some boring stuff behind desk offices and so sound work. I just can't seem to hold a decent job.
All right. The Now, Kevin, you possibly wrote the coolest. Well, I can't say that. Well, I can say that Andrew Roberts isn't here, but I know he's probably watching. But you wrote the coolest short poem in the book. Andrew wrote us an epic poem, big, and tell us about yourself.
Well, I, in apparently a drunken stupor, submitted a poem, and you, in a drunken stupor, accepted it. So it was a rather interesting exchange. But I am a computer science professor by trade, and
Say that again.
I am a computer science professor at a liberal arts college, a university down the street called Northwest Nazarene. And I teach computer science courses there for my undergrads. I'm part of a website, Fantasy Writers Online, and I got your link and thought, it might be kind of fun to submit a poem. So I did, and also the short story later on. But as you didn't mention, my short stories are generally not very dark. They tend to be satirical, and I certainly had a great deal of fun with my Tooth Fairy version of Santa Claus.
Well, now this isn't your first sale, is it?
I have published in a couple of anthologies, but I didn't. This is my first sale, quote unquote. I've also got a bunch of technical papers. If you're into reading IEEE computer science papers, I published a number of papers there, and I've also blogged for data science publications. So if you're really interested, you might find me there in a few blog posts. But otherwise, no, this is the first person who's actually been insane enough to give me money for something I wrote.
That is phenomenal. We here at BQ Press, while we
I hope it doesn't hurt.
Huh?
I said, I hope it doesn't hurt being a complete novice in this.
Oh, good Lord, no. I'll tell you a little story here. I was laying a brick wall, and I had a guy in there helping me. He just graduated from high school, hadn't really figured out what he wanted to do, and he needed money. Now, he was a tank. This guy moved 6 tons of block in one day. And he mentioned to me when he found out I was a writer or publisher, he said, well, I wrote a story in high school, and teacher said it was pretty good. I figured, okay, hey, bring it over and I'll give it a read. Just, you know the story, Gordon. Never turned down an opportunity to read a new writer.
Yeah.
And he brought it over, and I sat down. I read the first page, second page, I read the whole thing. And all I could say was, dude, you need to put down the bricks for a while and get yourself on the computer, because writing is where young men and young women, they write their best stuff while they're young and gain the skill set. Okay, just a second here. There we go. Our editor has shown up. So here, let me finish the story real quick. But the bottom line was, I bought it from him on the spot, and the book was a bestseller.
Very nice.
And he, like I said, he's just a 19-year-old tank that moved 6 tons of block yesterday, and today he's it just always looks. So, Kevin, do not even doubt when you sell your first story. It's like Yahoo, and go with it. We are joined this morning by Alicia Hilton.
Hello.
She is our co-editor on this, and I will tell you, working with Alicia has been an experience where I can say I have learned loads. I've got 20 books sitting on the shelf over there that we published, and every one of them you learn more. So, Alicia, introduce yourself and tell us about you.
Thank you. Thanks for the compliment, Bob. Great to join you this morning. I'm obviously an editor. I see myself more as an author, though. I write both fiction and poetry and nonfiction, sometimes from a legal and law enforcement perspective. As far as my background, I've been writing for a long time. But before that, I was an attorney and I was an FBI agent. I've done some professional acting as well. I still sometimes work as an arbitrator and guest lecture at law schools. So most of my writing's cross-genre. I blend genres together like horror, science fiction, fantasy, crime fiction, mystery. And I do that also with my writing. I do write some literary work too. So it's great to join you this morning. And my website's aliciahilton.com. You can read more about alternative holidays on the website and my other recent publications.
And anything you want to get out like that where you think it might benefit going in print for all of you is you'll see a chat comment running off to the right on this screen. And that's where all our folks are saying good morning. Somebody wants to know, a Facebook user commented on Graybeard there, throwing last century on his bio. You gotta like it. I think almost everybody here probably graduated high school in the last century, except, I don't know. It's hard to say. I know you and I did, Gordon. But tell us, Kevin, about your dog poem, if you would, because I will tell you, I remember Alicia and I were talking about that one as it came in, because there was a goodly number of submissions on this, and we were proud to get the people we got.
Absolutely.
Do you remember?
Well, it's an interesting story. I have, once upon a time, I had a little dachshund. His name was Rusty, and he was a little rust-colored, little brown dachshund, and he would chase a ball anywhere. And to me, it was almost a religious experience to watch a dog chase a ball, because I just, dogs in general are very happy, lovely creatures. And to see this one little dog who just loved to chase his ball, I've never forgot it. I miss him greatly. And I have never, my wife loves to have dogs. And I personally, after Rusty, I just kind of never really got all that fond of them. But that experience was rather, in some sense, transformative. I mean, like I said, it was almost a religious thing, a very spiritual thing, just watching him be himself. And so what happened is I thought, what would be an interesting poem would be something about a dog who chases balls. And of course, this idea of Santa and alternative histories, I rather quickly put the two together and came up with that particular poem. Now, of course, we've changed it a little bit, but it still has sort of the same vibe. Like I said, I've actually written a number of things. I published a little drabble along the same lines about a dog. That one's a much more sad poem. Essentially, the dog's owner dies, and the dog is sitting there trying to get the owner to throw the ball, right? But this one's a much happier one, and I definitely like happy endings. So that was kind of where it came from. It was just another manifestation of dog chasing ball.
And you know what I liked about your poem? Obviously I liked it. I remember an early draft. You had it as a puppy, and being of my age now, I realize I never want to get another puppy, because when I pass, the saddest thing I can think of is the fact that my last thoughts will probably be, but who's going to take care of my old dog? And by you writing this about a mature animal, not just a puppy, because everybody loves puppies, you added a depth to your poem that really made it work.
Well, as I said, I kind of credited your suggestions on that one. After thinking about it, I thought, yeah, that's actually rather poignant, and so it was a nice change.
Yeah, I very much liked it. Now, Gordon, you wrote us a story called Scream Stream.
Yeah.
And did you want to tell us about that?
Well, it was basically, since going back to the days when I was working by myself, make friends. So I had a character who's not, kind of isolated. He tries to make friends, doesn't work out. So he decided he's going to do this thing. He's going to find this website that nobody knows about. You can only reach it occasionally, just clicks on it, and it somehow transports you somewhere. And so he goes to a graveyard where nobody will find him, so he can do it all by himself and then brag about it later. And things, of course, don't work out well from that.
Yeah. Alicia, you weren't here when I mentioned that my wife had been dying to read this. And so I got it. I downloaded it to her Kindle for her, and she went in and read it before she went to bed. And boy, did she chew my butt the next morning.
Why? Because she was scared?
She said it scared her to death. And the stories just, I don't mean to say it harshly, but they disturbed her. But she kept reading. That's the part I like. And continuing to read like that is while she's not here, we were supposed to have Lafond on here with us this morning, who wrote The Last Reindeer. And that was the one that she truly loved. When I sent out all the invites this morning, the emails just bounced for no logical reason. And it was so I am glad we did this. But Alicia,
Yes.
you have work in this. I mean, not only did you do an outstanding job editing, you provided two really good and on your Cupid story, it wound up as the cover art after a fashion on this story. And you want to tell us where this story came from, or what your or just tell us about it, because people are going to want to read this.
Sure. Well, I like to write things that have some unexpected twists or angles, and stories and poems that introduce a hidden side of a character. So this in my mind was Cupid, who usually is depicted as someone who helps people to fall in love or mends problems, and sometimes he's mischievous and, tempestuous and obviously sexual. But I wanted to show a different side of Cupid, and how this like many of my works, have someone who has some fairly good intentions, but things do not go as planned, and my story takes a very sinister turn, and starts out kind of uplifting, and you see there's some tension between Cupid and his father, and then when Cupid lands on Earth and tries to intercede with humanity, of course things don't go as planned. I like to do that to mix genres. Here I have something that's fantasy, it ends up being dark fantasy, and you have an urban setting, plus you have Olympus, and of course there's crime that occurs, and there's horror. So it's kind of my, I guess you could say, my trademark, or what people come to expect from me is a mix of genres, and sometimes some kind of twisted humor, and sometimes some sexuality, and you get that in this story.
Yes, humor. We here at BQ Press, and Alicia, I don't think she found it out the hard way, but I hope she came to um, understand it. Is you can't be all dark. You've got to be able to laugh. If you can't read a story in here, if you can't find something to laugh about, uh, then, for example, Greg Chamberlain's The 12 Zombie Days of Christmas uh, should leave you rolling on the floor. Because it's just a takeoff on the 12 Days of Christmas, but um, 12 gifts that you give somebody during the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, that's lovely twisted work.
Oh, somebody just asked. Some of our reviewers, or I mean, some of our viewers come in late. 9 o'clock Sunday morning is early, and so good morning, Roberta Gregory and Bruce Taylor, two wonderful people we have that in the B Cube family, and they ask, "What book are we talking about?" Which is a good question. Alternative Holidays, available now on Amazon in Kindle and paperback, and it's also available on Kindle Unlimited, so that if you do get it up on Kindle Unlimited, make sure you leaf through all the pages, at least after you've read your favorite stories, because that's how I get to pay these wonderful authors. Now, this was the first opportunity for myself and Alicia to work together. And I have to say, like I said earlier, I learned a lot from her. And the those of you who know BQ Press know that we're a rather informal outfit. Um, I, I like to be able to publish books I want to read, stories I like, and I have to give thanks to Alicia. She expanded my horizons on a couple of stories that I might have said I'm not sure, and because Bruce is out there, Bruce Taylor, he writes magical realism. He's called Mr. Magical Realism. And his had been the only stories of that style I had read. And which was the one that you uh, we bought from that? Love.
Jerry Lean's story.
Which one?
Jerry Lean's story.
Yeah, Jerry Lean. She wrote a wonderful story once. Alicia convinced me to actually read the whole thing,
Hmm.
and um, I thought, okay, maybe Bruce isn't the only writer in this genre I can read. Um, but are there? What are the? I mean, I know it's like putting out anthologies like having kids. You can't say, well, this is my favorite, because the other kids, there were 11 of us, will rise up and destroy you. Um, but I think our writers is there any story that you felt was a particularly standout that if somebody who likes horror wanted to read this book just for the horror aspects of it, uh, that they might consider, Alicia?
Well, there's quite a bit of horror in this book. Probably more horror in this book than any of the B Cube titles before this.
That's
So
absolutely true.
yeah, so most of the stories and poems are either horror, just straight out horror, dark fantasy, or they blend genres and have horror in them. I would say that probably my poem, Candy Canes and Brimstone, is probably the darkest, most twisted poem in the book. And as far as horror goes, there are a lot of different types of horror. If you're wanting to read something that doesn't really have that much of a supernatural aspect to it, but it's a really powerful piece, Richard Thomas's story is very good. If you want something that is a grisly Christmas Fair by Kelly Piner, that's quite good. Invitation is another interesting story that takes a really emotionally resonant, angle of horror.
I
There's and
loved
it's
Invitation.
and there's a lot of other really good work in this book that showcases different varieties of horror. So, I can't mention it all, but I think that quite a few of the authors in this book are going to get more attention for their work since we've published it. And what excites me about the book too is just the emotional impact, because it's one thing to write something that's quote scary or that has a lot of action, but you have a whole nother level of resonance when you have an emotional impact on your reader. And that's what the work does in this book, is there's readers are going to feel something when they read the stories and the poems and the essay, you know, and that's when you have something that really makes the reader think, hey, I can see how there was a character arc. I can see how this made me feel something. And it could be different things. You could feel dread, you could feel joy, you could feel a twisted mixture of, excitement, titillation, and be scared. And it's lovely to go from one work to the next and see where this book takes you. Go from the bottom of the sea to Olympus, and your emotions are gonna be in turmoil too.
Yeah. Now, because of the way I manage the books here, B Cubed, writers invariably see the complete book 2 to 3, sometimes 4 times before it goes out, because uh, that's we're all in this together. Was there anything in this book, Gordon? Because you've edited a little bit yourself in your life, haven't you?
Just a tiny bit, yeah. I have to confess I haven't had a chance to read the entire book because I've got other projects I was working on, so I've been like dipping and dabbing there. So I can't really pinpoint anything in particular. But I do like Alicia was talking about mixing genres. When I started doing my own magazine, that was one of the points of my magazine was to mix genres as much as possible. That's also how I learned how to write, by looking at mistakes when they send me stories.
Yes, it
But to
is.
see the book, I'm a failure. I didn't get around to it yet. I think I'm gonna get the hard copy. I'm gonna like just sit back and go, all right.
Well, you should have one in your mailbox pretty soon.
Looking forward.
You did order it, right? Or get the order to Deborah, correct?
Yeah, I sent her the notice last week. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a wonderful former editor. She edited our last #1 bestseller, Alternative Apocalypse. Great book. Buy it now. Who recognized how much work it is to get all the book orders in, and she's a core member of the B Cube family. And she said, "I'll help you get all the orders, the book orders filled." And so, while Alicia and I's name is on the cover, recognize some of the hard work that goes in from other members of the team, like Deborah Godfrey did. It's deeply appreciated, and we'd be nowhere without them. Now, Kevin, how did you do on reading the book?
I have the electronic version, but I was actually waiting until I got my hard copy. I've ordered 2 copies. And so I have essentially scanned the table of contents and is looking at various things, but I haven't yet dove into it. So you sort of caught me off guard there.
That's okay. I saw you looking at your computer while Gordon was talking. I figured you were preparing yourself for that question.
Well, I was actually thumbing through some of the emails, seeing if I could find that electronic version, because I know I've got it sitting. And I thought I had saved it in this one drive, and it wasn't there. So that's what I was in the process of going through it.
It's okay, because there's one story that Alicia mentioned. Invitation probably, while I love every story in this book, Invitation is one that hit me really hard. I mean, it resonated through my own experiences. And I just got to say, when you get this, pull that one up. And I can't remember who wrote Invitation. I don't have my TOC up. You remember?
Hold on.
Jennifer Warner.
We don't remember his name, but he's a great writer, or she. I can't
Jennifer,
Jennifer
Jenniffer Wardell.
Wardell. Okay.
Yeah.
But just the notion that because this isn't a Christmas book. We do not have 25 Santa Claus stories. But I will tell you, if Santa Claus shows up in this book, he shows up in a good, solid way. And you get we see the different sides of Santa Claus. The Santa Claus that most often shows up in our book, I think, is probably Santa Claus the Protector.
That is true. That aspect shows up several times, but as the protector, sometimes he's rather violent.
Hey, a man's got to do what a man's got to do.
A little Krampus in there.
Oh, Krampus, yeah. I mean, Krampus at the craft fair is just a is a story that will make you laugh. I mean,
Serena Dory's story.
Yeah, it's a wonderful one, and I mean, who knew that Santa Claus kept a suit of armor and a battle axe in a closet in the back of his office? But we now know he does. It was a good one. Now, silly questions. Okay, so now that you've got yourself baptized in the fire of writing and addicted to it, you say you're a I'm talking to Kevin. You say you're a computer sciences guy, right?
Yeah, I'm a professor at a university here. I teach.
Have you ever read Dennis Taylor?
Do I know Dennis Taylor?
Have you read him?
Oh, I have not. What does Dennis Taylor write?
Dennis Taylor writes, he's a computer scientist and software engineer. I'm not sure if they're the same, but they're in the same box.
Interchangeable a lot of times.
Yeah, I'd recommend you go read Dennis Taylor. There's very few authors that I can say honestly that I've read every book they've written, excuse me, righted. Anyway, as a
Right.
computer science guy, man, I would go find Dennis Taylor. He's out on Audible mostly, but every time he puts a book out, it goes boom straight up to the top end. And
Wow, check them out.
oh, please do, because he's just that good. So, what's your next plans for your next big sale?
Actually, I was kind of wondering if you're going to do another alternative holidays. I have a couple of story ideas I put together, and as you might have guessed, they're comedic, and so I'll probably look forward to maybe doing another submission. Other than that, right now it's just about time for the semester to start, so I'll be busy teaching computer science classes over the next 9-10 months. But I hope to get back to it. I've got a lot of little projects. I mean, I enjoy, like I said, I do a lot of comedy. I've got a lot of little comedy bits. And I'm also working on a novel, which, strangely enough, has nothing to do with comedy. It's a much more serious work, but we'll see how it goes. As I said, I was pretty new to this and was actually rather shocked that somebody would be predisposed to purchasing something I wrote. So it worked out, and we'll see how things go from here.
Well, keep at it, because Gordon, I can't remember exactly, but what's the second rule of writing? I think it was
Just keep writing.
Yeah, I think it was submit what you write.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a old New Yorker cartoon I used to keep on now, but it shows a guy sitting in a basement surrounded by stacks and stacks of paper. And his wife is looking down and he's looking back at her and like, finish it. Why would I finish it?
I'm a firm believer.
Send it out and then forget about it. Work on the next thing. Don't wait for that to come back.
Oh, I just figure it don't suck. As long as it doesn't suck.
Somebody has suggested that we publish Alternative Tyrants. I welcome them to read Alternative Truths, More Alternative Truths, In-Game, and After the Orange. I think one can say that we have probably read our share of, we have written our share of Tyrant books.
Plus, the upcoming Roe book will have some Tyrant aspects to it, I'm sure.
Oh, the upcoming, which one?
The Roe book, the upcoming Roe book.
Oh, yeah. That is a reminder. BQ Press has post-Roe alternatives. I mean, ever since those, and anybody offended, I'm warning you, I'm going to rant about the Supreme Court because if you look at what the Supreme Court did and then look at what Kansas did, it's very clear. America is pro-choice. Because when Kansas goes pro-choice by 60% of the votes, that pretty much says that this country is pro-choice. And when the Supreme Court decided to invoke their own religion in making the right to reproductive health care illegal, or allowing the states to make it illegal, of which 10 have now done, we could no more take that setting down than could we the election of the orange baboon. And we put an open call out the day that he was inaugurated and published it on his 100th day, and got the joy of spending 6 days in #1 science fiction anthology. And when we saw what happened with Roe, we said, no, I know we got a full schedule, but we put out the call for Roe, alternative Roe, and that is an interesting. It's going to be an interesting book, and there is still time for anybody who's wanted to write something for it to submit it, because we've got some really great people working on that book, and so I would just encourage y'all to get stories in. And another thing we got coming up, Alicia, you're vaguely familiar with, is our Breaking Up not anthology, Breaking Up novel set. We have what's going to be a 3, maybe 4, but most likely 3 trilogy called Breaking Up, where all of the politicians that have been calling out to go kill FBI agents or defund the FBI, or the red state caucuses trying to say, well, we don't have to follow the rules. We can abuse our people any way we want. We're putting together a nice trilogy based on that. And it's going to be by a fellow by the name of Sumner Brooks. Now, Sumner Brooks, anybody here a history buff? Nope. In the 1850s, oh, you are?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you remember when a certain one congressman from the South hauled his cane into the Senate floor, or was it the House? I can't remember.
And you say, did he beat the guy with the cane or something? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it was Mr. Sumner beat Mr. Brooks to death.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so Sumner Brooks is writing this book. And we have it is made up, a compendium of authors are all writing the book together, a novel. It's a step above a shared world anthology because it's all one novel, but we have some pretty good art writers in there. We got a David Gerald is one of them.
David Gerald?
The David Gerald. Huh?
Star Trek fame, that David Gerald?
Yeah, and also Hella and the Martian Child. I mean, anybody who thinks David Gerald's career ended with Tribbles hasn't been paying attention to David Gerald. He is definitely a creative force to be reckoned with, and we are just proud to have him on board. And it's going to be a fun book. We even have a Fox News commentator occasionally shows up in it. I'm not sure if Zucker Carson is, anybody might have an idea who that could possibly be based on, but it is a brilliantly funny book to work on, and we're enjoying it. Because tyrants deserve to be talked about. Would-be tyrants. America should be standing up to those people every day, every time, every hour, and should let it never go unchallenged. However, that gets me onto a rant, and I don't want to rant. So what's going on in your world, Alicia, in terms of projects?
Well, we have Kevin had asked about whether we're going to do another alternative holidays, and you haven't mentioned Holiday Spawn, but that is something that we've been working on. It's kind of a spin-off book with some authors who submitted originally to Alternative Holidays. And then on a personal note for me, I'm working on my own writing. I have a novella and a novel that I'm working on, and various, I have some short stories and poetry out there on submission. And then starting in September, I'm going to be doing more speaking engagements. I'll be at Worldcon. Bob will be there too in September. And I'll be on a panel about The Final Girl, and then doing some book signings. And I have speaking engagements at 4 different law schools coming up where I'm going to go in and guest lecture about things like legalization of marijuana, which I'm in favor of. I'll be debating someone who's against it. And then some of my other upcoming speaking engagements are talking about criminal justice reform, which I'm in favor of. And I also talk about preventing and remedying law enforcement misconduct. So mostly I'm spending time on my own writing, but I have some editing projects, and another editing project I'll be doing in 2023, which I can't really talk about yet. That hasn't been announced, but it's going to be a big project.
I mean, this kind of stuff, B-Cube got their start in political fiction. And we just, speaking of law enforcement misconduct, most people know that I managed to get myself doused with milk to get the tear gas out of my face down at Portland. Because I believe in protesting. I believe in standing up. And I don't just write about it, talk about it. You'll find me out there doing it. But going down to Portland inspired a book that we just put out called The Protest Diaries. Because we recognize that as far back as you go in American history, the Whiskey Rebellion, the original, the Boston Massacre, America is founded on the basis of protests, and change comes through the actions of people willing to get out, stand up on the street, and shout their discontent. And it has changed so much in this country. Because does anybody believe that the government would have recognized the women's right to vote if the suffragettes hadn't gone out, been out, marched down the streets? And labor. The labor movement in this country is a story of protests. Ending child labor. It took protests to do it. This country is so much better for the fact that Americans have the right and freedom to assemble and protest. And every time you see somebody talking about setting up free speech zones way off the far from the event, or trying to turn anybody blocking traffic during a protest into a felony, we have the powers that be on one side of the issue would ban protests if they could. And even the January 6th riot, it was way more than a protest. It was an effort to overthrow the government, or used as a tool in the effort to overthrow the government. It was just one tool. Started in the minds of many of the people there as protests. So I urge you to go out and look at the Protest Diaries. There will be copies at Worldcon. So Alicia, you're going to be at Worldcon?
Absolutely.
What about you, Gordon?
I am not. The only convention I've got up for the rest of the year is PhilCon. I'm still waiting for details on that. I do have several projects that I'm playing around with. List. I've got a Sherlock Holmes story. For some reason, I started selling Sherlock Holmes 2 years ago, and I've become an addict now. Another collection of fairy tales. I'm supposed to finish up by the end of November. One or two Cthulhu, and I am still trying to come up with a really good story for Rose. So far, everything keeps coming like it's either too depressing or it just doesn't. I'm too mad about making it coherent. But I am playing with that. I hit that page every day and try to do something with it. I'll get you something in the next couple of weeks. Don't worry.
It's going to happen. The Worldcon, I am indeed looking forward to it. And the wonderful thing is, I heard a few people on here have mentioned Jim Wright. I'm doubling up on all my Jim Wright books because Jim's going to be at our booth for a little bit at Worldcon. I expect him to spend a lot more time over at David Gerald's booth because that's a fun place. But a Worldcon is a very unique experience. And having been a dealer at about a half dozen of them, I am enjoying it and liking it. It's a great place to sit. A dealer's table, you don't have to wander around the hallways feeling like, well, what should I do now? You just sit there, and the people come to you, and there's always good conversations. And the editor, the writing guest of honor this year, their previous one had to back out for family reasons. But Steve Barnes. Now I will tell you, if you go to Worldcon, I've had Steve Barnes on the show, and it was basically me sitting over here in my window shutting up, and Steve Barnes giving a master's level course in writing. And this guy learned at the feet of some of the masters, but he's going to be there, and I urge you to go see his panels because he's not shy. So, what are you looking forward to most at Worldcon there, Alicia?
Well, connecting in person with authors and publishers that I've worked with, but I've never seen them in person. People like you, Bob. And then obviously just being able to meet readers. I love to talk to readers and hear what they are reading right now, what they're looking forward to, what their thoughts are on things I've written. Networking.
Hey,
it's been the first time I will have gone to a convention in person since COVID. So it'll be nice to get out there in the world and just see people too.
Yeah, we're still going to be behind our masks, but it's going to be a good time. I see that Andrew Roberts is talking about signing each other's books. And I see Kian's watching. Kian, I am so sorry that email bounced because Kian was going to be one of our guests this morning. As I said, some server malfunction shut down my emails. But
those darn computer scientists, crap.
Say again?
I said those darn computer scientists, they mess up.
Okay, it's hardware. But all I know is it was fun. Well, hello, Andrew Roberts. Andrew Roberts has showed up. Do you want to say anything about Andrew's poem that he wrote for us? I will have to say it is the single longest poem I've ever published.
Well, I contacted Andrew, actually. I'd read, we follow each other on Twitter, and I'd read some of his poetry and enjoyed it. So I actually sent him a direct message, and said, hey, Andrew, I'm editing this anthology of Bob Brown, and I'd like you to submit some work. So Andrew wrote this fantastic poem. It takes us on a journey, into another galaxy and brings us back. And it's one of those works that has a lot of emotional resonance. And I went through, early drafts with him, and he came up with a beautiful, epic poem and then submitted it. So I'm very glad that he's been one of the authors, and look forward to collaborating with him in the future.
Yes. One of the things to remember about BQ Press is I have never published a anthology without poetry. I believe it's just as a legitimate form in science fiction as the short story, the novel, the novelette, or anything. And it is a pleasure to publish some of the poets we've published. Jane Yolen is a wonderful poet, and she is probably my most often published poet. Her and Wyndon Alexander, a woman down in New Orleans who publishes great work. And if you ever get a chance, we have a collection of hers called Digging Up My Bones. If you like feminist science fiction poetry or feminist poetry. Now, I had to say to her when she asked me if I was interested, I said, look at me. I'm a 63 or then 60. I'm a 60-year-old white guy from the South. Are you sure I'm the right person to publish your work? And she honored me by saying yes. And I am absolutely thrilled that she did so. It's got some powerful work in it. So let's see. We have Alicia. You've written poems for us. You're a poet, and
Yes.
Andrew, you're a poet. I mean, Robert Andrews is a poet. Kevin's a poet. How many poems do you think we had in this book? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, I don't remember at the moment because we also have some that are going into spawn, but more than a handful. I mean,
More than
obviously,
a handful.
uh,
That's it.
most of the book is fiction, and Andrew's poem is the only long poem in the book. Um, but we have more than a handful of poems.
I wouldn't say
And
he's
you,
a long poet. I mean, whoever
no,
wrote
it's the
Beowulf is
longest
probably
poem that we
jealous.
published in this book. It's the longest poem that we published in this particular book. I wanted to mention, Kian, you talked about how you wanted to have her on the chat with us live, and it's a real privilege for me to include her story. She's another person who I had, contacted and asked to submit work. And her Midsummer with Vampire Romeo and Zombie Juliet is a terrific story. If anyone likes Shakespeare, it's certainly worth a look. And even if you don't like Shakespeare, it's very accessible for just modern readers, and it combines horror with some, rather witty humor. An excellent,
Yeah.
very entertaining story.
Kian's probably still laughing at me a little bit because I was unaware of just how many quotes were appropriate. She actually used some of the original wording from Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
And me being the editor I am, of course, I tried to edit him. Hey, why not? And she set me straight, but that is a pleasure to read. I mean, when you wake up one day and Romeo's a vampire, Juliet's a zombie, and they find their own kind of forbidden love. And it actually, I thought she did an incredible job with the ending. It broke stereotypes, but fit the story of Romeo and Juliet remarkably. And anybody who likes the introduction of zombies or vampires into classic literature will be pleased to read Kid's story. And
Absolutely.
It will work well. Well, we're coming up on the last 5 minutes. So tell you what, Gordon, do you have any closeout comments?
Off the top of my head, no. I think I already said what projects I had going on and so on. I do say that I think you do a fantastic job, BQ Press. I've really been more impressed with a small press in my life, including my own. So I'm just happy
Wait,
that
did you
invited
say that
me on
again?
these shows once in a while.
The
You could just hit the replay button.
Yeah, your because this was your second publication with us, and I think so. My memory
I have to
serves
double
me
check.
correct. I have to
I'm not gonna
say,
Yeah.
20. When you got 20-something books on the shelf, there you're at my age, encyclopedic knowledge of who's in what table of contents doesn't always work. And well, what about you, Kevin? You got any closing comments?
Well, it's just a real privilege and a pleasure to be involved in this little project. I certainly appreciate the work that the two of you put into this. You know, it was a lot of fun, and I look forward to, you know, perhaps doing some more of this in the future.
Well, I look forward to it. I'm excited about going to Worldcon, and I got a table stacked this tall full of books over there. And I'm packing them all up to get them. We're taking Amtrak, first time ever, but we're going to spend 2 days riding the train. My wife didn't want me to drive, but I love driving. Last time I drove to Westercon, I stopped and Puppy got to pee on Billy the Kid's grave. The
Train trip
Hey.
before it beats airplanes.
It will be a hoot, and it'll give me a chance to read all of the stories we've got in the queue for Madam President. As an answer to the question before you go back on Alicia, will there be a sequel to or another alternative holidays? Ask me after I've seen the sales numbers as we approach the holidays, because this was definitely a fun book. And as Alicia said, we have all, when you're a publisher, Gordon, you can remember this, or Alicia, is you get some reprints that are so good that you realize you could almost make just a book out of the great reprints you have. Well, we've done that one before when we put Alternative Deathiness and Alternative War together. We had so many good reprints, we put out a volume called The Spawn of War and Deathiness, which is all, oh yeah, see, I told you we'd had you on there before.
Yep.
I have a story in that.
Oh, and you're in there too, Alicia. Yeah, we
my strange dinosaur story that's horror and science fiction and fantasy too. Dinosaurs, zombies, the apocalypse.
So Alicia and I are just now kicking back into. We had to take a break after the marathon drive that Spawn or that Holidays was, but we are going to have alternative or a spawn of alternative holidays out here, hopefully by this end 1st of December, so they can be on your holiday shopping list. And so, anything you want to say in closing?
Well, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us this morning, and look forward to working with more of these authors again, hopefully in the future. And please follow my website, aliciahilton.com, for more news about upcoming publications and my appearances. And obviously, check out the BQ website too.
Okay, and that's my cue to say, what's next week? Well, next week is it's going to be interesting. David Gerald and Jim Wright show up for last Sunday. When we get those two together, I've been known to just turn off my camera and go get coffee and listen to the talk, because they are two of the most intelligent, entertaining, informed people. And there's nothing better to listen to informed people talking as opposed to watching Fox News. That said, everybody say goodbye, because I'm about to punch that button that says we're out of here.
Bye,
Take care, all.
everybody.
Thanks for
Bye.
inviting me.
Great